Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. He's joining us from London. Good to have you with us, Marwan. Let's focus on the next 72 hours, which is the point during which Hamas is supposed to start releasing the captives that it is holding in Gaza. Now, in return for that, as we know, there will be Palestinian prisoners released. One of them will not be Marwan Barghouti. He's a prominent Palestinian leader. He's one of four who the Israelis have already said, no, they're not going to be let out of jail. What does this tell us, do you think, about the way that about Israeli intentions towards the Palestinian leadership, given the insistence or the stress that, say, Qatar is putting on the fact that there needs to be a Palestinian representation in Gaza?
Look, there's no doubt that Israel has already started violating the agreement. And there's no doubt that it has, ill intentions moving forward. Although this has been, from the very start, an Israel first type agreement. The Israelis were able to revise the earlier draft from the Trump administrations when the Palestinians were left in the dark. And ever since then, the Israelis have actually been trying to walk back some of these commitments, which really included the possibility or the capability of resuming the war at will, which prompted Trump to give some sort of a guarantee that he will not allow Israel to resume the war. So I think this is going to be a kind of bone-breaking type process moving forward. Israelis trying to muzzle their way out, trying to manipulate the Trump administration into accepting new clauses, perhaps. And clearly they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the Palestinians, not accepting whatever the Palestinians are delivering in terms of compromises and concessions. So it's going to be difficult. But there's one thing we know, is that you cannot trust Netanyahu.
I want to ask you, the Access News site is reporting, and this is the only place that I've seen it at the moment, it may be reported elsewhere, I haven't seen it, that Donald Trump plans to hold a summit in Egypt when he's over here to discuss Gaza. Now, apparently, if this is accurate, it's going to include Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Italy, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan and Indonesia. What it does not include are Palestinians or Israel. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but this would be what you call an international effort, right? So the United States with other parties in order to push forward something which the United States is not willing to do on its own, like finance the reconstruction or deploy troops in this part of the so-called task force and what have you. And I think it is not a negative thing. It's a very positive thing to include the international community or those who are interested in the region and beyond, like certain European powers and Middle Eastern powers, and certainly the likes of Qatar with long experience, in order to get involved in the process. If you leave it to Netanyahu and Trump, this will be a flawed process, as we've seen from the earlier drafts. But if you involve the international community, if you involve Europe and Middle Eastern states in it, then on the one hand, you give them a stake in the process. And on the other hand, you give them a say in the process. And that say is very important because, as we've seen from the revisions that the likes of Turkey and Qatar and Egypt made on the earlier draft, they spoke about freezing the illegal settlements. They spoke about rejection of any annexations of the West Bank. They spoke about stopping the violations in East Jerusalem. They spoke about a clear path to a Palestinian state. None of these things made it to the version that the Israelis worked on. And that's why in the days, months ahead, it's going to be crucial that some states like Qatar and Turkey and Egypt and others remain engaged not only by helping and financing, but also by having a say in what Netanyahu does and does not do moving forward.
And maybe that's where the role of guarantor comes in, isn't it? Because we've got one timeline we know about, 72 hours, that deadline for Hamas to release captives from Gaza. But after that, we've got no more deadlines, and we really don't have any definitive timelines for anything. The rest of the ceasefire, as you've just been describing, seems very undefined.
Well, as you and I spoke over the past few days, once you go beyond the so-called 72 hours clause, then everything's up for grabs. And I think Netanyahu wanted it that way. He wanted every other agreement, like every one of his predecessors, wanted agreements that are come in stages and phases, and Israel is able to dictate whether that stage is over, how much concessions have the Palestinians delivered, and so on and so forth. When you make a process into stages without a defined end, a clear defined end, then it is the stronger party, in this case Israel, is able to dictate the process. And that's why, once again, it is so important for the type of European and Arab parties that recognize Palestine as a state, that recognize genocide to have been ongoing for the past 2 years, that recognize that Netanyahu government cannot be trusted, and also recognize that Trump has a short attention span, and that today he's talking about Gaza, tomorrow he might be quite preoccupied with China or Chicago. So moving forward, these are not just guarantees in the abstract. These are assurances that this process will go the right way. The right way meaning ending the occupation, self-determination for the Palestinian people, a two-state solution, whenever that is solvable at this point in time, in order for the Palestinians to be able to live free at last. Without that, all of these points about, international trusteeship, or the likes of Tony Blair getting involved, or the likes of Israel dictating the process moving forward, will ensure that it will implode in the next few weeks.
Marwan Bishara, Al Jazeera's senior political analyst. As always, Marwan, thank you very much indeed.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.